Hello, and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joseph Arthur, PMW's Multimedia Editor. On today's show, I'm joined by my editorial colleague, PMW's Premium Content Editor, Jyoti Rambhai, to talk with me about the big news of the weekend. This coming weekend, I should say. That being Black Friday and Cyber Monday. The biggest sales event of the year, certainly the biggest sales event of the Golden Quarter. We dive into how the trend has grown year on year, why that's expected to happen again this year, despite some broader and domestic economic turbulence. We refer to data from PMW's recent retail report, as well as some of our other coverage that has popped up across the news desk lately. And we do a little bit of looking ahead, and I try and play devil's advocate to the idea of sales events and Black Friday in particular, just for the sake of argument, as I'm apt to do. And it makes for a really interesting discussion about something I'm sure marketers are all very excited and nervous about happening this coming weekend. Following that discussion, I'm joined by Guy Meyers, the Senior Director of Customer Success Global at Recurly. Recurly is a fintech platform that helps its clients build out their subscription services and their subscription offerings. And the subscription economy is a really fascinating one to me. And I speak with Guy about why fintech and subscription data is perhaps being a little bit slept on in terms of the potential benefits for brands, advertisers, and marketers. The abundance of consumer data available to these providers can be really, really useful for brands. Together, Guy and I also get into why subscriptions are a model worth investing in. We talk about some of the do's and don'ts, what the data says about the potential of the model, what we can expect from the future, and how things have changed in the subscription economy in the past 12 to 24 months. Finally, we try and answer a key question to do with this topic. Subscriptions, they rely often on loyalty and ultimately are an upper funnel tactic, but a lot of them, as you would know, engage lower funnel sales tactics within them to maintain consumer interest. And we talk about whether or not this is loyalty or whether or not it's just doing what you can to keep the fish on the line, as it were. And ultimately, the question I pose to Guy is whether or not loyalty itself is becoming a reliably measurable metric. I should also say this is the penultimate episode of the podcast for this season of the show. We'll have one more episode coming your way in early December. It will be a little bit different. That episode will be a bit of a Christmas special. So this is, I suppose, the final traditional episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast for this season. So I do hope you enjoy it. With that said, time to sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. Jyoti Rambhai, hello. Welcome back once again to the Performance Marketing Unlocked studio. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, we were just catching up off air, weren't we? It's
Yes.
a hectic time in the world of performance marketing, namely because peak season shopping-wise, and we're going to get into that a little later on in our chat, but it's peak season for events, isn't it, November, December?
It is, yeah, especially in our industry.
It's one thing onto the next. You were saying you've got things to do, places to be almost every day for the rest of this week and most of next. So not a lot of time for R&R.
No. So I'm cherishing my weekends, although come December, even the weekends are being taken up by socials. And that's just, meeting friends and seeing people before you head off for the Christmas break.
Yeah, unlike these work events where, well, you could say we're friends with a lot of the industry folk we get out there and chat with. I like to think so.
Yeah, and it's nice, everybody wants to book something in before Christmas and have a drink and speak about the year. So it's a nice way to end the year.
And today's episode, it's actually the penultimate episode of this season of the podcast. So
Can't believe you're saying that.
I know, it's come and gone in an absolute flash. My first season of the show, it feels like I'm still coming to grips with the podcast itself and hosting, producing, editing, getting it to all function. And now here we are on the second to last episode of the season, and then it'll close through December and we'll be back at it again in January of next year.
Did you know this week is 1 year exactly since I joined the Performance Marketing World team?
Wow. So that's a little bit of a personal milestone, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
How's the year been?
It's been great, you know. I've really enjoyed working on the team, and it's nice to know I feel settled in now, and I know what I'm doing, and yeah, it's been a good year.
It has been a good year, and I think you joined at a really exciting time, and the premium content has gone from strength to strength under your watchful eye, which has been good to see. But I think the brand broadly, it's been a great year, and I'm excited to cap it off with a strong end to Q4, and who knows what's to come next year. But we're going to talk more about this year and next year in the next episode of the podcast, a little bit of a 24 in review, 25 predictions piece coming your way. But today, this episode comes out the week of maybe the biggest sales event of the season. It's the Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. Would you say that's the biggest one on marketers' calendar?
Yes. Everyone is gearing up to this. It's the biggest sales weekend, of the year. And that's globally.
Now, I've heard, I think post-pandemic, it's taken a lot of big annual events, sort of 24 months to get back into the full swing of things, back to those pre-pandemic levels. That's what I've heard a lot this year. And some of the rumours about this upcoming Black Friday weekend is that it's going to be one of the biggest on record.
Yeah, I definitely think it will be one of the biggest on record, but I slightly disagree with you, Joe. So we've finally published all of our retail playbook report, and one of the things we found when we were speaking to people when producing that was actually Black Friday has grown year on year since pre-pandemic, since its inception, right? It was massive in the US, and now it's filtered across the world.
I suppose it's foolish of me, really, because it's one of the things that would have thrived in the pandemic. It requires no face-to-face interaction at all.
Yeah, exactly. And consumer habits sort of changed and shifted quite drastically during the pandemic. Everyone went to online shopping. So there was a lot of brands had to do some work to try and get that right. And some of that is just continued off the back of that.
Well, talk to me about this upcoming weekend in particular, because as you said, it's grown year on year. That trend looks set to continue. Nest Commerce recently said in their readout report that we're on the cusp of a potentially record-breaking Black Friday weekend. How much money is going to be spent? What can we expect? What's the data? What are the figures?
Right, so according to MediaWorks, UK consumers are projected to spend almost £10 billion across Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which is a lot. And to put that into context for you, last year we saw, so this is data from Kantar, that on Black Friday week we hit almost about 2.2 billion just on Black Friday alone. And that's up 9% from the year before. If you think about it per person, last year that equated to something like £275 per person spending on Black Friday across electronics, fashion, homeware. They're the key sort of categories.
What do you think is driving the excitement around this particular Black Friday? Because I've got some thoughts of my own, but I want to hear from you first, because you have been the expert across the retail report and you've dug into a lot of the data. What's driving all the anticipation for it and all the expected spend and investment?
Well, I think, so there's two parts to this, right? Last year, everyone thought we weren't going to do that well because of the cost of living crisis, and people were being quite cautious with their spend. But we did. It became another record-breaking year. And part of the reason was consumers were being a lot more savvy. They're looking for the good deals and they're doing their research. And I think that's going to be translated this year as well. I think we're going to see a lot more consumers being a little bit more savvy with their purchases. We've got a lot more bargain hunters, essentially. And even as a consumer myself, there's things I want to buy, but I'm holding out and watching, seeing what's happening and doing my research on the prices to see if then when Black Friday hits, what are the discounts.
Will Ashton, the CEO of Nest Commerce, summed it up quite well, particularly that sentiment people had around last year. He said, every year peak season performs and e-commerce grows. And that was off the back of close to 5 years of negative headlines about the state of online retail. But those two things are consistently true. And I think it will hold true again this year. Where I pivot a little bit is, you're right, consumers are increasingly savvy, and we see that in the data. We also see that within our own personal habits as consumers. We're doing a lot of research. I've got a big old blacklist of saved items that I'm going to go ahead and buy the minute the deals come alive. Is the UK economy, and then maybe the broader macroeconomic state of the world, there's a big cost of living crisis that's ongoing. Inflation's high within most of the Western markets at the moment. Are consumers forced to be savvy? Because, as you say, these bargain hunters, it's sort of the only opportunity for consumers to spend and feel that it's within budget when it is these big sales events like Black Friday.
A little bit, yeah. I think so. And if you think about it, it's a season of gift giving. People want to buy their family's gift, their friends. At work colleagues, we have a Secret Santa here. So Black Friday is a great opportunity to get some really good deals. And even if you're on a budget, it means you could get, hopefully, more for your money.
It is certainly coming at the right time, and it always does every year. It's into the season of giving, as they say, and everyone's getting in their holiday shopping. Now, I'll play devil's advocate, and I can do this quite easily because I don't want to seem like the Grinch. I love Christmas, but famously in the office, I don't believe in gifts. I think they're rubbish. I think it's a waste of time and money. I'd rather be put to something practical or be immersed with something where I can sort of choose where it goes. I don't need to have this conversation again.
You're one of the few, Joe, that thinks like this.
But is there not something to be said for, and I know performance is obviously a performance marketing world, the bottom of the funnel, we understand how critical sales tactics and performance marketing is. But if consumers are relying on promotions and seasonal shopping events like Black Friday to become confident and actually spend some money, that means it's teaching brands and marketers perhaps some bad habits to only focus your spend on lower of the funnel and capitalizing on these seasonal events. Do we need to be weary about what these things might say for the future? Are we building bad shopping habits by teaching consumers to wait for promotions specifically instead of loyalty or trust and brand faith? And are we teaching marketers to only invest in these big events because that's the only time consumers spend?
I don't think so. I think there are opportunities throughout the year, and you will have, retailers will have their own sales days. Easter's a good time. They'll have summer sales. You do see that still. But I think, and this is traditionally, this is the peak season. It's called the golden quarter for a reason. Everyone spending naturally just increases. And we're not just talking from a consumer perspective, but from a media side as well. You know, with the Christmas ads, people invest, or marketers are investing more in their campaign activity. And we see that in performance marketing as well. It's not just about the deals, it's about, I guess, embracing the festivities.
So then I ask you, Jyoti, what is making you not feel particularly concerned for the future of the upper funnel looking ahead? What is there to say that consumers are going to become? Because economically, we're all waiting on consumer sentiment to improve. A lot of marketers understand that people's back pockets are very tight. So what to you says that that's going to ease and consumer confidence
Well,
will
I
grow?
think this year has been a little bit unprecedented. We've had a general election, and in the lead up to that, both consumers and marketers are naturally more cautious with spend. But
We certainly saw that in Q3.
yeah, but I think we're sort of coming through maybe the other side of things now, where we've had last few years, we have had quite a lot of economic instability, and I think that's easing. Inflation is, in the UK anyway, it's plateauing a little bit. We're seeing interest rates come down slightly. So I think next year there is cause to be optimistic about these things. And then to your point about consumer spending, it's not just about buying gifts or things that you don't necessarily need but want because it's at that time of the year. Think about your everyday shops. You still need to spend money to buy food, shopping, and things like loyalty programs are still going to be there. And I think brands like Tesco and Sainsbury's with their loyalty programs are still going to give personalised offers to consumers for their everyday shops.
I guess and that's the good argument you've put forth there, is understanding the context around these purchasing. And you're right. The season of gift giving, you're not necessarily buying things for yourself. Even those things that you are purchasing for yourself, they're often a little bit more one-off purchases. They're orientated around perhaps things you want more than things you need. But then when you do get into Q1 and Q2 and normalcy, should we say, your spending habits are far more orientated around your weekly shop, transport, fitness, things that you need on an ongoing and a regular basis. For me, the only thing I would say on why I think cautious optimism is the best phrase to round things out is what's precedented anymore. Every year for the past sort of half decade, everyone said, well, everything that's happened is so unprecedented. And now looking ahead to the future, we've got Trumponomics returning to the White House.
Yeah.
We've got Labor's first budget. We sort of have to wait and see whether that gets a passing grade or not. But I think it's fair to say the outlook's a little bit up and down at best. There's a lot of economic and macroeconomic, the conflicts in the Middle East, the conflicts in Ukraine, that are ongoing, that I think will be cause for pause in the future. But we will touch on that more in the next episode of the show. I'm jumping the gun a little bit here. But is there anything else on this Black Friday weekend that we can expect to see?
Well, I think we've got to remember now, Black Friday is not just a single day event, right? It's a week long. Last week was what's been coined the Forgotten Friday. Amazon started deals from then in the lead up to Black Friday. And that's not the only retailer doing that. You look across the board to some of the more traditional in-store, like, for example, fashion retailers, they're doing exactly the same. So I would say Black Friday, we talk about it as a single day, but it's much broader and wider than that. And it's basically a sale season. It's all about the deals.
You're absolutely right. The scope for sales is getting broader and broader. And I think that's something that's changing year on year, is that the deals are starting earlier and they're finishing later. And
you have to think about it as well, that consumers are planning earlier, marketers are planning earlier. The other thing I will say as well, because of this, because it's over a longer period of time, this is where marketers need to be watching what's happening, right? They need to be on point and adjusting their I would say, not even bottom funnel activities, but full funnel activities in real time to how consumer behavior, say, and conversion rates.
So it's a good opportunity to gather some data and analyze some trends.
Gather data, analyze trends, and watch what's happening in real time.
Jyoti Rambhai, hello and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked studio. It's a bit of a weird one because you were recording with me not 25 minutes ago, and we've had to shepherd you back into the studio because as I was finicking around here, closing down the recording, getting it ready to edit, put everything together for next week, some breaking news has come across your desk.
Yes, so I've just gone through my emails and I've found out that actually inflation has gone up. Just as we were recording, they made the announcement. So that's at 2.3%. So what I was saying earlier about
contrary to what you've just heard, I will say I've got a big old smile across my face
Yes.
now, because once again, being a total naysayer, a negative Nelly has proven to be true. But although it's bad for consumers, myself included, broadly speaking, no one wants higher inflation. But this is contrary to what a lot of people were thinking was going to happen.
Yeah, and we thought interest rates and everything is going to be stabilised, but actually by inflation going up, it's likely to see interest rates going up, or at least staying at a higher level than anticipated. Now, this then poses a little bit more uncertainty than what I said before, and I think we are going to see more consumers be a little bit more cautious with their spend. I think a lot of people are now going to be keeping an eye out on what happens with Trump and what happens across in the US, because a lot of that is likely to filter across.
Now I haven't really caught up myself. I literally haven't left the studio, so I'm just hearing this directly from you. But this release, This is breaking news. Inflation's increased to 2.3%, which is contrary to what people thought was going to happen. Likely impact is then interest rates either go up or remain the same. So domestic economics here in the UK, it's not what anyone wanted to hear, and it's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's basically we're going to see higher interest rates for a longer period of time than we anticipated.
Brilliant. Well, not brilliant, but...
That's what it is in a nutshell.
So what does that do then for this coming Black Friday weekend? Is that going to push consumers to put even more money into it?
I don't know.
Is that going to change sales tactics at the last minute?
It depends on the consumers. Like, if they're across this, they might be thinking twice about their budget, for example. How much are they willing to spend over the Christmas period? Not just on gifts, but, on everything from Christmas dinner, your shopping, your booze, all of that, right? As well as going out. And how much do they keep in their back pocket come the new year to see what happens? Your rainy day fund, how much do you want that to be?
It's digesting this as I'm hearing it now. It sort of, again, just brings me back to the point I made earlier of I'm not hugely confident in consumer sentiment improving set against this turbulent domestic and macroeconomic climate, because it's great that I do think we're going to break records on Black Friday. People are going to spend. I don't know what this will do for the numbers. Maybe it won't be quite as big as people had hoped. I'm really fascinated to see what happens in the wake of this coming weekend, now that the domestic economy is in the state that it is. That's super fascinating from a purely journalistic perspective. But again, it might underpin that marketers just focusing on the lower funnel and these sales promotions and peak season, like we saw a freeze in Q3. Now we're going to see a ton of investment in Q4. What does that say about Q1 and Q2 of next year? And looking at the long term, I just fear that we're teaching consumers bad habits, and marketers in turn are learning bad habits, and we're neglecting the future. And the consequence of this is what's going on in the world.
I think so. And I think those and the brands and the marketers that might come out on top are those that, one, don't just look at the bottom funnel, look at the full funnel of performance activities. And two, those that keep an eye on media inflation. Now, a little while back, it was forecast that media inflation was going to rise exponentially globally, but UK was one of the ones where it was going to stagnate. It'd be interesting to see what happens with media inflation in the UK.
Could this be a reaction to the US election news?
Potentially. It could also be a reaction to the fiscal budget as well. I'm not an economist, so I can't really go into that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Certainly from a marketing and advertising perspective.
Yeah.
that cautious optimism perhaps has just got increasingly more
Cautious. Yeah.
And a reminder, when we look ahead to the future, brand building and the long term can't be neglected because, like we said earlier in the show, what is precedented? You know, everything seems unprecedented today, and the climate, the economic climate, the marketing, ad spend, it's all becoming harder and harder to predict with any real accuracy.
Yes, to your point there, it really is. And I guess we'll talk about this in the next episode, but I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see not just what we think might happen next year, but what people in the industry think we're going to see in 2025.
It's a great point, and I'm going to leave it there because I don't want us to overreact in the moment. This is, at the time of recording, this has literally just come across the news desk. So it's one that we'll digest over the next fortnight. And as you said, the final episode of this season is going to be a bit of a Christmas special with some 2025 predictions. And I think maybe we'll be able to make some more salient, thought-through points in that episode. So stay tuned for that, where we'll talk about this in more detail. But nonetheless, it's a big turn of events. It will be interesting to see the impact it has on the state of Adland here in the UK and beyond. So everyone, good luck this Black Friday weekend. And for those of you who are perhaps a little bit concerned about the long term or how to brand build and build loyalty among consumers who are now increasingly up against it, you can look forward to a discussion with Guy Meyers from Recurly all about the subscription economy and how to get lifetime value from your consumers. I can't imagine a discussion coming in a more apt time. Jyoti, thanks for coming back in studio.
Thanks, Joe.
And delivering this breaking news. Hello, Performance Marketing Unlocked listeners. Host Joe here, interrupting for a brief moment for another 60-second news roundup. You know how this works by now. We've got 60 seconds to tell you some of the biggest stories that have popped up across the PMW news desk from the past fortnight. Let's put me on the clock now. Starting off in the world of streaming, Amazon recently announced that it will be shutting down its FAST channel Freevee and moving all of the content from that streaming service over to the Amazon Prime brand. Also in the world of streaming, Disney Plus dominates for a second consecutive quarter, adding the most new subscribers across AVOD and SVOD. With your latest Chrome and cookies update now, 7 in 10 senior marketers support Google's move to keep cookies. That's interesting news. And on this as well, the Department of Justice in the US looks set to recommend Google sell off its Chrome browser. Finally, rounding out this news roundup with some social media, namely X, whose ad revenues continue to plummet since the Elon Musk takeover. That's according to Walk. In a bid to help this, X recently signed a partnership with Pubmatic. Bang! 60 seconds on the dot. That's your news roundup. Now, back to the show. Guy Meyers, hello and welcome to the Performance Marketing Unlocked studio. Thank you for making the journey to Twickenham today.
My pleasure, yeah. Great to be back here. As I said, I was here on Saturday for the rugby, so good to be here again.
Wasn't quite the outcome English fans were looking for in the match against South Africa. It's been a bit of a tough trot for the rugby team, the English rugby team lately, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. Not putting away victories when we might have done, but it was good fun. The first half was really, really good fun. So the atmosphere is always amazing at Twickenham.
Yeah,
so
Twickenham's
it's
great.
a good day out.
The sentiment around here, sort of towards the office, I think the weather's bringing things down as well. It's not just the rugby; it's a gloomy, dreary day. And I think across the UK, we've had our first bout of snow for the season as well, which is exciting to some and terrifying to others, namely people like myself who don't do well in cold weather. But we're here to talk a little bit about the subscription economy today, with a particular emphasis on loyalty and whether or not that's something that brands, advertisers, marketers can sort of manufacture and whether there's best practice they can follow, and loyalty, trust, faith, these are becoming key metrics when it comes to consumers interacting with brands. But I want you to tell me a little bit about Recurly, who you work for. They're a fintech provider, but financial technology and the finance sector in general can be pretty opaque at times. So why don't you just reveal to our listeners exactly what you do and what the sector more broadly means?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's lots of companies in fintech nowadays. I think Recurly, where we sit, is in the subscriptions and billing space. So put simply, we help businesses build, scale and optimize their subscription businesses. So that's helping them acquire more subscribers, keep those subscribers once they've got them through loyalty, and also optimize their operations. So we work with customers that are just starting out in subscriptions, all the way up to those that have done it for a while and now maybe limited by internal tech and want to start scaling what they do. But yeah, it's subscriptions, it's helping businesses maximize their subscription businesses.
Is fintech being slept on a little bit for the potential data benefits it presents for people who jump on board?
It could be. I'm not sure whether it's being slept on overall. I think the customers we work with, those teams, those brand teams, growth teams, marketing teams, are really kind of keen to understand the data points and where we can help through trends. As you said earlier, there's a lot of compliance, obviously, in fintech. We've got to be careful with the sensitive data that we hold. Obviously, payment information and all of that would not be something that would be, shared, or obviously PCI compliance. But we do have a ton of data points across the customer journey, customer lifecycle that can be really valuable to our customers, and the trends that we see and some of the best practices that we're able to share.
So how are you walking that line of identifying the trends and the data points that can then be turned into actionable insights, and making sure that you're sharing what you can to get the most benefit for your advertisers and your clients, but also not overstepping and sharing anything that can't be shared?
Yeah, that's a good question. We absolutely look at accumulated data. So we would never share an individual person, customers, clients' data. But what we are able to do is look at data points. So Recurly's been around for 15 years, billions and billions of data points. We're able to accumulate that data together and share trends. So one example, a really simple one, I suppose, at the top of the funnel, when you're looking to win new customers, what are the best offers to put in front of a new subscriber? What's the best trial length? What are the best payment methods? Those kind of things. So we can look at a global database and then look at trends and share the averages that we see. So it's very much on that aggregated top level.
So you're anonymizing it on a one-to-one basis, but then you can bring it out more broadly and identify trends.
That's it.
There.
Yeah.
So subscriptions, why should that be a space brands invest in? Because there's a lot around the subscription economy, and there's obviously, we'll get into some of the do's and don'ts later, but what's your short elevator pitch per se for a company that hasn't looked at a subscription model? Why is it something that should be considered?
Yeah, I think going back to the data shows it as a big growth sector. So we work with a particular sector that we look at is digital media and entertainment and streaming. That sector in the last 4 years has seen 125% growth in their subscriber numbers. So that's huge. And at the same time, those customers are maybe being a bit more picky, but they're staying around. So we're seeing overall churn numbers fall down as well. So business-wise, it makes sense. I think subscription revenue for a business is really valuable nowadays. So whether that's an investor looking at a company that they might be looking to invest in, or the markets, that predictable repeat revenue that subscriptions offers is really valuable. Not as much money up front, but that repeatable lifetime relationship that companies are now able to build with their customers. So you can start thinking about net revenue retention. How do I keep my customers, give them great value so that they then spend more in the years ahead? So I think the data tells us, I think it's good for businesses. It's good for consumers as well, who don't want to invest a lot of money in a service at a time. They can be in control of their funds. They're used to that kind of flexibility and control now that a regular payment that's a smaller amount gives them. So the data definitely points in that direction.
Is that consistent across everything from startups, SMBs, through to bigger multinationals even?
I think so. Like we're talking to people that are maybe even just thinking about subscriptions next year, those that are just starting out, want to get up and running, and those that have been doing it for many years. I think that the value of that subscription revenue is there. Having those regular customers allows companies to reinvest in their service as they've got that foundation that they can then build on when it comes to revenue. So yeah, we're working with customers of all sizes, of all industries.
When it comes to subscriptions, the one thing I know, both from a marketing perspective and particularly a consumption perspective, it's a very competitive model, and it gives rise to industries that are very competitive. You mentioned streaming. It's a very fragmented industry. It's becoming more and more diluted, and consumers are finding themselves met with a multitude of different options and offerings. Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Tubi, you've now got fast services, you've got the ad-funded models, you've got the subscription tiers that are ad-free. Beyond streaming, you've obviously got food delivery services. HelloFresh comes to mind a lot. I think if you're a podcast listener, you probably know exactly who they are. How can businesses compete when they do start partaking in a subscription model? Because obviously consumers, they're already getting pulled in a million different directions in a million different facets of their lives. How do you convince a consumer that your particular subscription is worthwhile?
Yeah, I think it's the same question that you'd have said before subscriptions. You know, a new entry into a competitive market, like how do you stand out and convince someone? I think it's still having that value proposition that's unique, where you're slightly different than the others. In some of those busier spaces, we're seeing more kind of partnerships and almost bundles now of subscriptions as well. I think I saw recently that Prime are looking to even be able to show other streaming content through their subscription. So it's just getting creative about the way you deliver content. But I think it's still the same. It's still, are you offering continued value? And that's the key thing with subscriptions. It's not a one-time value exchange. Someone's committing to a regular monthly or an annual payment. They're expecting that value to increase and keep them interested over time. So I think it's being unique and then keep adding to that value proposition as you go.
What are the do's and don'ts of a subscription model? You know, is there a case study you can speak to, or a particular client example you've got where they've done something, they've entered the market and they've done a really, really good job?
I would say start simple. If you're going to enter subscriptions, you don't need to have 10 plans in 10 different countries to get up and running. Start simple, play to your strengths. You've probably already got loyal customers with spending patterns that kind of shows you where the best opportunity is. So start with a simple subscription to get up and running. It's then removing friction from the flow. So some customers or some businesses that I've seen, the subscriptions are a little bit hidden. You have to really dive into the website to find it. So elevate your offer and then remove friction from the sign up flow. We've all gone to pay for something in the past. You're expecting one of your digital wallets to be there and it's credit card only, and you then have to go off and find your wallet, and then you kind of don't come back because life takes you in another direction. So friction from the payment moment is really important to remove that. And then I think it's communication. So I think what you were getting at is that kind of idea of there's a load of subscriptions, subscription fatigue. There's some press even just yesterday about making it easier for consumers to cancel their subscriptions if they want to. There's lots of legislation coming in. For me, it's like transparency of communications all the way through. So if you're going to offer someone a free trial, you don't want to kind of sneak them through to, the trial's ended and now suddenly I'm paying. Like, be really clear up front. This is, if you sign up today for your trial, this is the next moment when we're going to take the first payment. But if you want to cancel beforehand, you can. And then this is what you'll then be signing up for, a monthly agreement. And I've worked with customers who've done that on the sign up page, having a really clear view of what's next. And that's had a positive impact in terms of people feel safe. We talked about trust. They trust the process and then they'll sign up. So I think that's important. And then, give the people the flexibility, personalize that experience. I think of coffee subscription for myself. I don't want to be signing up to the same packs completely for the next 12 months. I want to be able to change what's included, maybe add some 1 month, pause for a month because I'm going to be away for a few weeks, all with a click of a button. So I think that that real kind of personalization and flexibility is there.
You've been with Recurly, you were saying, a couple of years now. In that time, how have things changed? Both in terms of brands' interactions with the subscription model, but also consumers. Have there been any interesting trends in the data you've seen? You mentioned subscription fatigue, which is probably something that's been increasing, I'd say, post-pandemic quite a bit more. It's certainly a term I've seen pop up a lot more across the press. What have you seen on your side in some of the data?
In terms of subscription fatigue, I think it's banded around a lot, and I think it's really to do with just the proliferation of options now. There's so many that you
just
can
about
get to.
every industry
Everything
has got some sort of subscription offering, whether that be across fitness. You've got food, as we've mentioned. We've already mentioned entertainment quite a bit. It can be quite exhausting just trying to think of it all.
There's tons. I mean, we helped Alaska Airlines launch, I think, the first airline subscription. We've worked with Citizen M Hotel Group for their first subscription. So there's been some new industries coming in. I think what we've seen is subscribers getting just more aware and more picky about who they stick with. So I think if you've got the right value proposition, you will keep your subscribers for longer. We are seeing churn overall go down in terms of people cancelling their subscriptions. The conversations I've been having with some of the global businesses we work with, the shift is there's always been a focus on growth, of course. You've got to get new subscribers, you've got to get new customers, but there's a real, I suppose, extra emphasis nowadays with the way that maybe the global economy's been on retention as well now, which brings us back to that question of how do we drive loyalty and value and keep those subscribers for longer. So a lot of the conversations we're having is around subscriber engagement, tools to help reduce that churn and really value growth from a customer perspective. So you're keeping those subscribers longer. The old adage of how much it costs, 7 times more to get a new customer than keep them. That's a real focus point. That's probably been a trend.
That's what I wanted to get onto. It's this idea of loyalty now, and across Adland and in the whole marketing game in particular, loyalty is becoming something that's a necessity for long-term growth. But it's very, very hard to gain. Trust is difficult to build. It's very easy to lose. It's also very difficult to measure as well. And it's hard to identify what works as a loyalty building strategy and something that's looked at upper funnel and a bit more long term, as opposed to those sort of lower funnel performance tactics. And subscriptions, something I find really fascinating as a journalist, because it very much incorporates the full funnel. You've got these early doors offerings and sales tactics to try and get consumers in on the subscription. You think discounted months or a free trial period, and they might stagger the cost. I know HelloFresh do that. First box 60% off, second is 20%, all the way down through 5 weeks in. That might be the first week you start paying the full price for a week's worth of food. But how does that contribute to retention? And I'm just thinking out of my personal experiences. Sometimes I shop around and take advantage of these deals, but don't always stick around for the long term. Once it gets to the normal price, or status quo, should I say, I dip out and look for an alternative option within the same industry, because often there is an alternative that I can try on the cheap for a period of time.
That's the thing with subscriptions, is that everyone has that consumer angle. It's very easy to
consumers
understand.
are getting really savvy now.
We are, they are, yeah. And I think the thing is, it's a big change from that one-time transaction. You know, I've bought something for a few £100s, and my kind of expectation is quite short-lived, isn't it? It turns up, it's good service if anything goes wrong, and it installs and it works, and then I maintain it, but I'm moved on with the rest of my life. With a subscription, you're as a consumer, you're kind of committing one way, aren't you? You're saying that I'm committing to a regular payment. To you as a business, I want regular value back, and I think that's where the loyalty can come in. So you talked about, we would call that ramp pricing. It's one of the things that we offer customers where you plan ahead, right? So you pay a bit less here, and then next month is a bit more until you drive up. More and more customers are now talking to us about ramping down pricing over a period of time. So let's say you've been a loyal customer for 6 months or a year. You then actually get a reduction in price, deliberately and planned, to thank you for your ongoing loyalty. I think it's really important. We can see it in the data when we work with customers of when those moments of concern are. Maybe it's usage, maybe it's payment activity. On average, the data again will show us after it's 9 months is your risk month for a lot of consumers. So get in front of that with an offer, a loyalty thank you. Maybe it's a month reduced, maybe not. We did some research directly with consumers last year, and I think 80% said they expect to be rewarded for their loyalty. So whether that's a price reduction, a discount, some kind of pause on payments, that is the expectation nowadays. And I think that's right. So I think that's some of the tactics, right? It's getting ahead of people potentially churning and rewarding the loyal ones, not just the new customers with those offers. So if I go back to my coffee example, if I'm there and I've had a year and I've paid and they give me a reduction for 3 months, even just a couple of pounds off the next 3 months without me even thinking, that's going to drive my longer term loyalty. I refer you, Joe, through a coupon and they give me a month free. You know, a new coffee machine's launched and I'm given 20% off because I'm a loyal subscriber. They are the type of things where you want to get ahead of those potential churn moments with good kind of tactics.
So is that building affinity for the brand and loyalty and advocacy for it? Or is it sustained sales tactics for a long enough period that people are just going to constantly stay on board? Like you say, that 9-month risk period, anytime someone might be starting to stray, you've jumped on that opportunity. Well, here's a little sales tactic that'll reel you back in and keep you going for a period of time. And then when you start straying again, we'll get you again with something new.
I think there's two sides to that. So I think there's definitely the data's there to be tactical sales wise, and then I think the other side of that is just data aside, being proactive in rewarding. So we talk about trust. So if I think, what are my loyalty? I have a good experience. I trust the brand. I keep spending money with them. Simple as that. If I'm delighted ahead of time before I'm even thinking about churning, that's a whole different thing than those tactical sale moments. And that's what we're talking to customers more about. So it's, don't wait for the alerts, but actually start rewarding customers for staying with you.
I see.
And I think that's what we're starting to see. So as I say, you've referred someone, we're not going to take that for granted. We're going to thank you, and then you go and refer someone else because you're becoming a brand advocate. The personalization element of that is really important. As a consumer, if you feel like I'm just getting the same as everybody else, in terms of one size fits all, whereas maybe I do want to pause or add something this month, I want that to be really easy, so I feel more in control of what I'm doing. If that's easy to do, it's easy for me to pause. It's easy for me to cancel because I might not want to pay for this for the next 3 months. If that's easy and I'm trusted and I feel valued, then I'm more likely to come back in 3 months' time. Maybe I've had a change of circumstances. So I think it's that trust is built through all of those interactions, all of the transparency of communication, even to the point of, Joe, I see you haven't logged in for a couple of months. Are you on the right plan? Maybe we actually right size you to a different plan, and that's kind of a bit counterintuitive to the revenue models of growth. But better to keep someone on the right size plan than lose them to churn.
So it is very much developing a personal relationship with each and every consumer, and I guess not having that one size fits all approach. What works and what doesn't in the data? I suppose what I'm asking is loyalty and trust. Are these becoming reliably measurable metrics?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think in terms of what works, we've talked about subscriptions going across the life cycle. So we are able to look at the data and go, a trial works. Let people try before they buy. That definitely works. And normally 7 days or less is the most kind of effective in terms of converting a trial into an actual ongoing subscriber. Discounting works. The data shows us that having 20% off or $10 or £10 off as a tangible kind of incentive, they are the most effective vouchers. We haven't got data today in terms of that ramp down pricing, but customers are starting to experiment with those types of tactics. In terms of measuring, we use LTV, lifetime value, as a core metric with customers. So that's one of the things we look at, which is, it's useful because it's simple and it's tangible. It's a dollar amount. So over the course of my relationship with that brand, how much do I spend? But I think with subscriptions, the lifetime becomes a little bit more complex in the sense that I might resubscribe later because I am loyal and I want to go back to a subscription that I didn't feel like I needed for a little while. So lifetime value is definitely a measurable moment, but for me there's nuances beneath that. A loyal subscriber customer will be actively consuming regularly that subscription. So can we track that? How many referrals per 1,000 subscribers are we getting to show, again, that loyalty and that advocacy? What is the propensity to resubscribe? We see it's an important number. Like, we sit down with our customers each month and look at how many new subscribers have we got this month? How many have left? How many have resubscribed? And that top section of resubscribers is a loyalty number. It might not show up immediately in lifetime value, but they're coming back for another go.
What success actually looks like is quite an interesting one to me. And you said these things are quite nuanced. So I imagine they are. It very much mirrors the reality of romantic relationships, I think, this sort of brand to consumer relationship, because is success, or the outcome that you're always pursuing, to death do us part? Because I don't know how many services are going to realistically be able to achieve that and say that's the goal for every consumer every year we have, because people, they get older, their lifestyle changes, their priorities change. You've got to be quite flexible. As you say, people might split up with a service, do something else for a little while and come back. So what does success really look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the relationship that we talk about, one of the benefits of a subscription customer relationship is that lifetime, long-term value relationships, like you said, a bit like a romantic one. But you're right, people change. I think what's important is there are cohorts of subscribers, right, for each business. So sometimes we work with customers that have had a subscription for quite a few years, and then they want to simplify their technical world, so they start partnering with us to help them grow. That cohort that they then bring into our ecosystem are often their really loyal long-term subscriber base. And I think it's really then important that you keep that loyal base. There's always going to be the fluid, I'm going to try it, I'm going to be savvy, I'm going to pause here, I'm going to go over there. Those kind of, savvy consumers that are maximizing the discounts and the opportunities. But I think it's thinking about the loyal cohort that you have and continuing to drive value and keep those people. And we see really, really low churn value on those. I think people have paid regularly for, a milk subscription years ago, and that would have carried on until it became cheaper in the supermarket. That moved on. But the idea of regular payments has been around for a while. So I think we're still learning. I think there's still a long road for a lot of subscriptions. They're a few years old with some of our customers. So that kind of longer term view is yet to be seen. But I think it's just looking after that core loyal cohort and giving them enough value so that they don't then kind of continually shop around and look at alternatives.
And I suppose the best thing for the future and the takeaway that brands, marketers, advertisers should really get from this conversation is having the data and the added benefit of the data on hand in real time to constantly review and analyze and gain insights from. That's really the key, isn't it? Is being able to react to trends and make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, I say it's a key part of the conversation. Yeah, we talk about tactics and features, but most of our conversations with our customers are about the data. What trends are we seeing? How do we benchmark against others in the industry? What are others doing when it comes to best practice? And what are the key data KPIs we should be looking at as a subscription business? And I think that is exactly it. People are looking to get ahead of any of those potential kind of moments of churn and being proactive ahead of that by the data. And it's all there. And I think that's what's quite powerful about the economy.
Guy, a data nerd like me, I can sit here and talk about it all day. Unfortunately, we are running short of time, so we're going to have to move on to PMW's infamous Resell Me a Pen challenge. Would you like to reveal, before we jump into it, to myself and the listeners, what outdated product or service you're going to attempt to resell to me today?
I'm going to try and resell the classic physical Ordnance Survey map. About this big. You can kind of have it in your backpack if you're out and about on a walk.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The Ordnance Survey map. It brings me back to the days of like watching Dora the Explorer as a kid, and you've got Swipe, the little monkey thing she's got with the map. I think the map's a physical thing in that show. But anyway, is that sort of the thing we're looking at? The physical map.
Yeah.
Keep it in your backpack. I don't want to tell anyone what they might be doing with the map for what activities. That's for you to try and sell to us. Guy, 60 seconds on the clock. I'll give you a warning when there's 10 seconds remaining and 5 seconds remaining. Top tip, that creeps up on you quite quickly. So try and move as swiftly as possible. 60 seconds to resell us the physical map, starting now.
I will start with the kid angle, actually. So I've got 3 kids, 11 and younger. They love a map, so that's hours of fun. So you can open that out. They're never going to be able to fold it back the way it came. They'll be following the roads and asking lots of questions about what's what on the map. So hours of fun with the kids. But back to the kind of core reason, I think for me, anything that encourages you to get outside, mental health benefits of going for a walk is massive. I love walking. It's one of my big pastimes that I've done over the years. Of course, there's technical solutions here. You know, you've got maps on your phone. But again, I think if you can put your phone away for the walk, because you're going to get disrupted with messages if you keep checking your location on your phone. Get that away, back pocket, open the map. Actually, there's a bit of challenge involved because you often don't know which way you're going because the map isn't giving you your little blue signal which tells you where to go. And at the top of a hill, you've got a good excuse for a rest because you've got to get the map out and check where you are. So, you know, that gives you a bit of breathing space at the end.
Bang on 60 seconds.
Okay.
Perfectly executed, Guy. I appreciate that. And I nearly caught myself earlier helping you out with your pitch because I was saying the old school map is something that really appeals to me, going on a hike and a walk and things like that. And I think I was glad you went there because to me, that's the obvious selling point. There's something very cool and you feel like an explorer and you're very much detaching from the technology. You're getting out on a walk. Maybe you get one of those old school compasses out. You've got your map. You can feel like a real explorer and you go off on a little journey and you've got no distractions, no technology getting in the way. And I think the angle of children's a really good one because they're obviously encouraging kids to get out and about and learn these skills. Reading a map's quite a difficult thing sometimes. I know a lot of people who really struggle to do it.
It is. It's really easy to go, I think we went off course 10 minutes ago. Let's retrace our steps and now try the other direction. But yeah, I agree. I mean, and of course you buy the map and you get the digital copy on your phone as well nowadays because it's, you know, it's not in isolation. But yeah, I say my kids love the map and they love getting out and like learning new. I think that was one of the legacies of COVID was people got out more, learned more about where they live and all the paths and all the cool places to explore. So I think the Ordnance map helps you keep doing that.
My favourite element is the enforced accountability too. It's unforgiving. If you go off course with your maps and you're using your phone or a sat nav, it'll tell you straight away and it will do a new course for you. But as you say, if you've gone off course 10 minutes ago, all right, well, now we've got to figure out where we are, where we're going. But sometimes
and who to blame.
And who to blame. And sometimes that's the fun of it, though, is it opens up the world of adventure. If you've gone a little off-road here, but what might we see instead?
Yeah.
And where's this going to take us, Guy? That's a really good pitch. And as someone who does really the idea of exploring and going out on walks and hikes, that something that appeals to me personally. I imagine many of the listeners too. So appreciate that effort from you. Really, really strong one to round out a really, really insightful discussion about all things subscription, loyalty, and fintech. So Guy, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
And that concludes this episode, the penultimate episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast, Season 3. A big thank you to my editorial colleague and PMW's premium content editor, Jyoti Rambhai, for joining me at the beginning of the show to talk about the upcoming Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. I know we'll all be sitting back with bated breath to see what comes of it and whether or not the predictions hold true and it is indeed record-breaking and consumers get out there and dive into the sales as much as many marketers expect them and hope them to do. Stay tuned as well because PMW will be bringing you lots and lots of industry reaction to all of the data in the wake of that weekend. Also, a big thank you to Guy Meyers from Recurly for joining me to talk about the subscription economy and fintech and loyalty. 3 things that I think are sometimes a little bit misunderstood and even neglected within the world of advertising. So lifting the veil on the pros and cons of subscriptions and the do's and don'ts of that particular payment model and its potential benefits for marketers, brands, and advertisers was super fascinating to listen to. And I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as I enjoyed partaking in it. As always, I would be beside myself, completely remiss if I didn't thank you, the loyal listener, for tuning in each and every fortnight as you do. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we will be back, as always, in a fortnight's time with another episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. It will be the final episode of the season before we take a brief hiatus over the Christmas break and return with a new season of the show commencing in the new year. Before I let you go, please, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your platform of choice. We're also all over social media with clips, articles, full episodes. Now you can listen to them on YouTube as well. So go and give us some love. Performance Marketing World on LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. In the meantime, have an amazing week, and you'll be hearing from me again shortly. Bye for now.